Hello, my name is Tracy Savage, national news anchor and reporter. Today, I will be asking and challenging the top executives of Realtor.com as to whether these threats to realtor commissions are overstated. I'll be asking them to share vital industry information and methods for responding to industry threats directed toward a vast national real estate audience.
Say no to real estate tariffs.
Mike, what is this threat? How pervasive is it?
Tracy, the reason for the threat is that the internet has increasingly become a treacherous online world. It allows powerful media companies, really for the first time, to use their money and influence to gate the real estate industry's access to consumers searching for homes and realtors online. These companies then in turn wish to sell access to these consumers to brokers and agents for 1/3 of their hard-earned commissions, effectively charging an online tariff, as Alan Dalton has so aptly labeled it. The internet can be gated for two primary reasons. One is that just in the last few years, consumers have overwhelmingly gone online to look for real estate. Today, more than 75% of consumers begin their search for real estate and for a realtor online. And even though that there are millions of sites online available to find real estate information due to the power of marketing, the power of new online brands, and new techniques, new marketing techniques, which can manage consumer behavior online for the first time. As a result of this combination of things, consumers go to only a very few places to begin their search for information. And this is primarily a handful of portals such as MSN, AOL, and Yahoo, and a couple of search engines, Google and Overture, to name a few. The consumers rely on these trusted sources to direct them where they need to go. However, it creates the opportunity for money and influence to effectively control the answers they get to their online questions. For example, who are the best realtors for me to work with? These online tariff companies intend to become the first point of contact for home buyers and home sellers. They plan to use their substantial, enormous media assets to, first of all, to insert themselves between consumers and realtors. Second of all, to convince consumers that they know who the good realtors are. In addition, they wish to convince consumers that realtors are badly overpaid and that realtors can afford to rebate a substantial portion of their commissions back to the consumers. And finally, they intend to convince realtors that they have no alternative but to depend on them for qualified online leads. Alan, since you've described this as a tariff movement, why don't you explain why?
Mike, before I comment, and Tracy, on the consequences, the intended consequences behind the use of these predatory companies regarding tariff, I'd like to acknowledge for our audience the significance of Mike Long as CEO of HomeStore and thus Realtor.com. Before coming to Realtor.com, Mike was the chairman of WebMD. And WebMD, as most of us know, is the foremost provider of medical services information on the internet. And Mike's vision for WebMD is going to be extended now to Realtor.com because the premise behind WebMD was to both protect consumer interest and the profession for physicians and medical people. And I'm very excited that that will happen also for Realtor.com if we win the war and win the right battles. Now, in terms of the battles, Tracy, without sounding too bellicose, it's very important that our audience understand that there's a definitional battle taking place. We hear countless realtors across the country talking in terms of their being willing to pay a referral to some of these portals of 20, 30, 35%. But it's really a tariff. And what these companies are doing, and it's very insidious and strategic, is that they're purposefully using the symbols and they're using the lexicon that we favor. It's like almost like somebody trying to attack the word love. So our industry loves the word referrals. In fact, Tracy, if you were in the real estate business instead of being a broadcast journalist, you'd probably have a business card at some point in time that would read, I love referrals. So there's almost a primitive pull professionally to the concept of a referral. And it's similar to what some people do when they hunt. they like to mimic the sounds and the symbols of the prey that they're targeting. And that's what's happening in the real estate business right now. We have to be very careful not to allow these outsiders to define this premise in a way that disadvantages us.
Mike, can you provide for us an example of one of these tariff models?
Tracy, there are new companies being announced every day to take advantage of what they perceive as this huge online tariff model opportunity. There are hundreds of companies that are being formed, it seems like almost daily, to go after this opportunity. What's important is that when you see venture capital coming back to life and focusing in this area, what it means is that there are hundreds, if not billions of dollars, hundreds of millions or billions of dollars that are tracking behind market moves, hoping to capitalize on being the number 2 or number 3 in that particular market category.
Well, Alan, isn't the tariff model appropriate for the realtors hoping to capture incremental leads?
Tracy, at the beginning of the program, you indicated to the audience that you would look to ask questions that you believed realtors would ask. That question's right on the money, because realtors all over the country are asking us and asking themselves, why wouldn't I want to pay what they call a referral? This is business that I otherwise would never have had. So therefore, it's incremental business. But in fact, it isn't. Because every year there's a finite amount of buyers and sellers in America that are going to transact real estate. And unless somebody comes in and adds a valuable dimension by expanding the consumer base, then it's not incremental business. What it is somebody intercepting the normal process of people buying and selling, and again, imposing a tariff. Now, the stand that you take depends on where you sit. I can understand where one realtor at one time may think, well, wait a minute, forget about the industry, forget about tariffs. This is business I never would have had, and I want that commission someday. But what happens is that begins the epidemic that will never be stopped, because it won't just stay online, it will infect every single port of entry every consumer in America has regarding real estate, and that's why the industry as a whole has to resist this temptation.
And Alan, as you and I have discussed with the industry many times, a lot of realtors believe initially this is incremental business, and we know that over time it essentially cannibalizes their core business, and essentially a tariff will be then payable on all real estate business that's transacted. One of the solutions to this problem is the industry doing a much better job following up on consumer inquiries, whether it comes from Realtor.com or from their own websites.
Great point.
Because what we know is that because these tariff models are so lucrative, that they will follow up. In exchange for a third of the commission, they will follow up with the consumer, and they will endear themselves to the consumer, essentially ratifying the tariff position that realtors don't necessarily do a thorough job, and therefore you need us as intermediaries between you and realtors.
Why now? Why is this a greater threat than, say, just 2 years ago?
Well, Tracy, 2 years ago was an interesting crossing point in the industry. It was a crossroads, because that was the point in time when that more consumers started going online to look for real estate information that went to the offline world, such as the newspaper. These companies that are developing these tariff models were not interested in real estate 3 years ago and 4 years ago because the consumers weren't online yet. Because these are online companies. They are expert at managing consumer behavior online. So now they've waited for the opportunity when the consumers moved online, and that's why they're there now. Because now it's a good time to invest their money, because the return, the ROI, if you will, return on investment opportunity is so huge. And that opportunity wasn't available to them only 2 or 3 years ago.
So now that we've heard about this threat and we know it's real, how do realtors and their companies respond?
Tracy, I think it's a two-step response. First of all, is awareness and recognition by realtors of how these companies and the tariff model actually works. The second step is a very coordinated online industry response. Realtor.com was created almost 7 years ago by Organized Real Estate, sponsored by the National Association of Realtors, to first of all satisfy consumer needs for information about real estate, and second of all to deal with threats exactly like this to the realtor way of life. At that time, most realtors didn't even have websites, effectively had no way of communicating with consumers online. Now every realtor has a website. There's over 1 million websites for consumers to go searching for a realtor or to get information about real estate. This fragmentation of the industry's online presence is exactly what's creating the opportunity for tariff companies. We need to absolutely ensure in the future that consumers look to organized real estate as the first point of contact, so they get the right message about the value of a realtor as well as get the information about the homes that are for sale.
Well, Mike, this leads me to ask this question of you, Alan. How well positioned is Realtor.com to respond to these threats?
We're extremely well positioned, Tracy, because we're the world shops for real estate online. We have more people coming to our site than any real estate website in history. The challenge that we face is that we are not conveying that message fully to the consumer. Approximately only 50% of consumers are even aware that their listing is on Realtor.com because there's been a reluctance with some realtors and companies to jointly market the benefits of Realtor.com. So the strategy has to be educational. The strategy has to cause realtors and their companies to understand that we are not an adversary, we are not a competitor, we're a partner. The competitor is the outside portals. Oftentimes I'm asked, well, how will our company get a difference, or a point of difference rather, through Realtor.com? And essentially, Realtor.com was created to give every company a point of difference over other companies. So we protect fees, we don't have to pay tariffs, and we save money on advertising. And when this happens, when we have the full weight of 962,000 realtors behind Realtor.com, then more consumers increasingly will come to us. They'll be predisposed, they'll bookmark us in their favorite section online, and they'll also will grow the organic traffic, because ultimately the biggest battle between the industry and the sources that Mike very emphatically and passionately referenced, that the battle will be between their marketing to the consumer, a diminished value of realtors, and companies in Realtor.com marketing and promoting a greater value to consumers. Because if the value to the consumers isn't very abundantly clear, then the consumers will go to another portal and they'll base everything on rebates, referrals, and lower commissions.
Well, Alan, as president of Realtor.com, I know that Mike has charged you and your senior management team to develop programs and services and strategies to help the industry respond to these internet challenges. Tell me a little bit more about the strategy.
I'd be happy to, Tracy. In fact, it's not just our leader, Mike Long, who has charged us with this responsibility, but the National Association of Realtors has. And just as importantly, the leading brokers and realtors have as well. In fact, we just met in Dallas 2 weeks ago with many of the leaders of the industry, and we asked them, what does Realtor.com have to do to be more effective in helping you meet your business goals? And the overwhelming #1 response was to do a better job of educating our realtors and our managers in terms of the integrated value when Realtor.com works with our websites as an online partner. So in January, we will be launching a national campaign called the List More, Save More program that will help companies secure more listings, defend their fees, ward off tariffs, and save money on advertising.
Why do you believe it's important for realtors to be noted for both their excellent service and their skills?
That's a very important question and has far-reaching implications and consequences. The real estate industry has done a significantly better job in the past 5 or 10 years demonstrating to the consumer that they provide tremendous service and an array of excellent services. But there's another dimension that has to be satisfied. We not only have to satisfy the consumer's needs for full service, one-stop shopping, and service is a personal thing with each realtor, we also have to signal to the consumer that we are also an industry noted for our skills. One of the reasons why we're very vulnerable, you asked earlier of Mike, why now? Because these other forces understand that real estate agents across the country, realtors in particular, are charging people surgeon-like fees that should be based on skills, but we're positioning it as a service. See, doctors and attorneys are not as worried about the big word disintermediation on the internet, nor are engineers or CPAs, because they're perceived as being in the skill sector. We have to make sure that realtors are also perceived and are in the skill sector. One of the things that we'll be doing with the List More, Save More program is that we'll be introducing some vital cutting-edge information as to how realtors can better position their skills online and their skills offline, because only then will the consumer feel that a realtor is indispensable, because every service parenthetically positioned can be duplicated or replicated. And when a person is paying $10, $20, $30, $40, $50,000 for their property to be sold, nobody is comfortable with paying $50,000 for a service, because a service is the frosting on the cake. The skills have to be the foundation. And when realtors really embrace the notion of better positioning their skills through Realtor.com and the marketing system, that leads us to the best practices study that we did. And in fact, I brought the information with me. Those realtors with between 10 and 50 listings who enhance on Realtor.com do 53% more business, are 53% more productive than those who are not. Those realtors who demonstrate their skillful marketing of property with Realtor.com, as opposed to a basic service posted listing, the average sales price goes from $279,000 to $336,000. So this is the type of vital information that we will be unveiling and uncovering at the List More, Save More programs. And there will be very special emphasis on the need to go from service and add skills. You can never overstate the importance of service. We need to continue to provide great service, full service, but the skills have to be reinforced, and we have to take it to a higher level.
Mike, you said Realtor.com is the most popular real estate site on the internet. Can you quantify that?
Tracy, first of all, consumers love Realtor.com. And the reason they like it so much is because it's the only place on the internet where that they can find almost every listing of a home for sale by a realtor. Also on the site, they can find every realtor in the United States that is a member of the National Association of Realtors. There's no other place on the internet to find that information in one place. Because they love it so much, they come to the site and visit more than almost 15 million times a month. They spend over 300 million minutes on the site looking for homes and looking for realtors to communicate with. The site is measured very frequently and very professionally by organizations that measure sites on the web that receive more than 200,000 unique visitors a month. And of all those sites that are in the real estate sector, Realtor.com gets 78% of all the minutes that consumers spend online looking for real estate. It's a phenomenal site. Consumers love it.
You know, Tracy, I'd like to add to why I think the site is so uniquely popular. Because in very real terms, I understand at the break you told Mike and myself that you live in the Los Angeles area. But if you were moving to Chicago or Boston or Dallas or New York City, and if I were to say to you, name the 2 or 3 best companies there that you'd like to contact, that might be a challenge for you. So what we find is that Realtor.com is the only site that the consumer basically goes to navigate both ends of a transaction simultaneously, because most people have to sell before they buy. And that's very important because they're coming to our site weeks in advance of even thinking of a realtor. And then because all of our traffic goes to realtors, that's a benefit to realtors throughout the country. The other reason why the consumer is predisposed to come to the site, which makes it unmatched in popularity, is because of the difference between a brand and an internet brand. You see, General Motors has a bigger brand than, say, AOL or Google, but Google and AOL are seen as internet brands. A lot of real estate companies have much bigger brands than Realtor.com, but Realtor.com is distinguished by the public, by the consumer, as an internet brand, which again is what drives traffic to the site.
Well, Alan, you recently wrote the article, Don't Say Anything Good About Realtor.com. What were you thinking?
Tracy, I'm almost a little bit embarrassed that you would ask about Don't Say Anything Good About Realtor.com, because I wrote that as a parody. It was a sophomoric attempt at using reverse psychology. And the reason I wrote it is that I detected around the country an increasing number of people effectively using Realtor.com that instead of sharing that positive experience with their colleagues and competitors, were either remaining silent or actually saying some negative things. And that was never more dramatically portrayed than when I learned of a website in the Midwest that was titled Just Say No to Realtor.com, where the proprietor of that website, actually, he was a broker, had his renewal with Realtor.com executed. So he was continuing to use Realtor.com at the office level while encouraging others not to. And then it reminded me that when I was president of my company, many times I'd hear associates in our organization tell new people to the business, new realtors, don't prospect, don't send out mailings, it's junk mail. Don't call people on the phone, it's a prank call, it's a this. People don't want to get calls from you. And that's not at all unusual, because it's like a captain of a fishing boat saying they're not fishing here, or an NFL scout saying, you know what, we're not interested in that player, when they really are coveting that player. In fact, what really made me understand it was my sister Kathy, who said, Alan, I don't even like to share information about the good babysitters, because we are living in a competitive world. But now we have to understand that our greatest competition is competition outside of the industry. And now I would respectfully encourage every realtor that is dramatically increasing their productivity because of Realtor.com to encourage your colleagues and your competitors to enrich the site.
Alan, you and Mike have just discussed the importance of marketing and advertising. My understanding is Realtor.com receives the listing it advertises directly from the 800 plus MLSs across the country. I understand that Realtor.com will no longer be paying local MLSs for their listing data. Why the change?
Tracy, the economic viability of Realtor.com has improved significantly over the last 2 years, but it does not yet produce a profit. The original economic business model upon which Realtor.com was founded was flawed. It required Realtor.com to pay a royalty to MLSs for the listing data. Second of all, it required Realtor.com to pay the cost of aggregating all of the home listings in the country from 840 different MLSs. Thirdly, it required Realtor.com to pay to advertise and promote all the home listings in America for free to consumers without any requirement that realtors enhance the listings. And fourthly, it required Realtor.com to pay the portals and search engines to secure online home seekers for the benefit of all realtors. Just in the last 22 months, we invested $65 million in acquiring new online traffic on behalf of the real estate industry. During an era when capital was free, during the internet boom, that business model may have made sense, but no one believes it makes sense anymore. Realtor.com is part of organized real estate. I can't emphasize that enough. Realtor.com is governed by rules and guidelines that benefit realtors and consumers, the same rules and guidelines that realtors agree to abide by when they join our industry. Realtor.com, in partnership with these 840 local MLSs, is effectively a national MLS for the benefit of the real estate industry. Asking Realtor.com to pay a royalty for the right to post the listings is akin to asking MLSs to pay brokers for the right to post their listings. It defeats the offer of cooperation principles upon which the entire MLS system and the real estate industry, as we know, is based today. It should be a basic benefit and a right that for every realtor in the country that lists a home to have that home listed on the official site of the National Association of Realtors.
Well, Alan and Mike, you both here have responded to a number of issues, but here's your opportunity to share some of your final thoughts with realtors across America. And Mike, you can go first.
Thank you, Tracy. Realtor.com is the envy of every other service industry that in many cases failed to respond to the threats and opportunities presented by the internet. Realtor.com was formed 7 years ago. It still really is a child. It had stumbled as it has sought to mature to serve this industry the way it should and can serve the industry. Now there's a new series of threats that are the attack on realtor commissions. Not a disintermediation of realtors, like maybe was the original concern with the line over the hill issue. I was not involved at that time, and I'm sure it was a very exciting period in the real estate industry. But now the threat is much more insidious, and it is targeted specifically not at eliminating realtors, but at disintermediating their incomes. In other words, the opportunity for realtors to work harder for less money. Our organized real estate can marshal a response. Realtor.com is not the total solution, it's just an integral part of the solution of organized real estate online, saying we're not going to pay a $25 billion tariff to get access to consumers online. And we can do this job effectively and serve consumer interests just as well or better.
Well, Alan, since I asked Mike the first question, I've saved the last question for you. What would you like to emphasize to all the realtors and brokers across America who want to better understand the role that Realtor.com can have in their respective careers?
You asked what I'd like to emphasize. I'd like to emphasize, and I'd like to be emphatic in emphasizing it, that more than anything else, realtors have to make sure that the brand name Realtor survives, succeeds, and flourishes, because we are in a world of brand wars. If you wanted to buy Coca-Cola or Marlboro, the two most costly brands in the world, it would cost more for the brands than the companies themselves. Something like 87% of every consumer decision is based on a brand association. I'm not concerned about the brands of companies. They're doing a marvelous job in terms of that, of building their brand and the equity in their brands. But many consumers are beginning to see the internet as their emancipation from using realtors in whole or in part. And they don't always see a nexus between contacting a realtor and seeking real estate information. So that's one thing that we really have to understand about Realtor.com. It is your brand. You don't work for Yahoo or eBay, you're a realtor. That's number one. The other observation is that it's your site. I like to say that to every person listening. It's not Mike's site, it's not my site, it's the site of every realtor in America. And if that's not understood and accepted, and readily accepted, then everything that Mike and I have been saying will be taken the wrong way. It will be taken as though we're here preaching, or we're making intense and hyperbolic self-serving comments, as opposed to rejoicing in the strength that Realtor.com has in providing realtors with protection and ongoing viability, and to better serve the consumers, which these other portals are not going to do. And the last point that I'd like to make, Tracy, is that I would encourage, to the degree that I can, every broker or manager who is first going to receive this tape to share this with the entire company. This is akin to a national real estate town meeting. And I don't say that to really overly trump the importance of anything that Mike or I say, but it is very important that every realtor fully understand the threats and how to enhance their value online because of the forces that are taking place.
Great information. Alan, Mike, I want to thank you both for joining me here today.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you, Tracy. Thanks for having us.